Welcome back, everyone, to day 2 of the National Conference on Ending Homelessness and Capitol Hill Day. Please welcome to the stage the Alliance's Chief Policy Officer, Steve Berg.
Hello, good morning. All right, welcome to day 2 plenary, where the theme is leading with love, equity, and respect for our unhoused neighbors. I'm Steve Berg, and I'm happy you're all here. And one reminder before we get started, the Lived Experience Lounge is on the terrace level. So people looking for the Lived Experience Lounge is on the terrace level. All right. I started preparing for this session by looking up love on Wikipedia, of course. The second I typed the word on my phone, the screen was flooded with little red hearts. My phone was directing me to one kind of love, romance, the kind that makes a lot of money and a lot of joy and is certainly related to our work. But when we say in our work, we're leading with love, equity, and respect, we're talking about something more profound and something each of us can share more broadly, arising out of an understanding that at a deep level, we are not separate, we are one. This kind of love the ancient Greeks called agape, the love that flows from embracing the inherent value and greatness of each person. Buddhists refer to it as loving kindness, leading toward a direct experience of oneness. Musicians know about this. Musicians, although they sing often about the heart's kind of love, can tell us about this oneness as well. Louis Armstrong telling us about the bright, blessed day and the dark, sacred night in What a Wonderful World. Aretha Franklin in Think, singing about without each other, there ain't nothing people can do. Stevie Wonder about hate knowing love's the cure in his song As. Tina Turner singing the brutal takedown of the heart's kind in What's Love Got to Do with It? But then in the bridge, it's about taking on a new direction. Bob Marley singing that love has come to bloom again in Hallelujah Time. Marvin Gaye about finding a way to bring some loving here today in What's Going On. This kind of love that's synonymous with oneness with others, it's essential, but it's not easy. It means confronting and overcoming racism and other kinds of prejudice and stuck thinking about things like gender that are ingrained in the systems that affected our upbringing and that affect our work today. It means letting go of power over others while finding the power that's within each of us and available to share with others, and that others, if we're open to it, will share with us in service of a goal like ending homelessness. The Alliance is working to make sure that communities understand how to come together like this, how people with lived experience of homelessness can wield power needed to find answers, how people working on homelessness can use our expertise and our knowledge of how to make things happen in order to improve availability and fairness of housing, in coordination with systems of healthcare, in solidarity with others who have been fighting for decades to make those systems respond better to people who are Black or Latino or who have disabilities. We're working with elected officials to make sure they know how people will come together around real solutions, long-term like permanent housing and services, as well as short-term like using some of the 35% of American hotel rooms that still sit empty every night. and insisting on abandoning dehumanizing practices like criminalizing homelessness. We're circulating a letter from members of Congress to the president, asking him to discourage communities from doing what the Supreme Court grants pass case allows them to do. You'll see on the screen a list of members of Congress who have already signed on, and we're hoping this list will be a lot longer once Capitol Hill Day is over.
Woo!
Thanks, Amy. We're happy to be able to present at this plenary some of our favorite people who can help us inspire this kind of work, starting with the Alliance's Vice President of Research and Evidence, Joy Moses.
Thank you, Steve, and good to see you all. I'm going to continue the conversation about love with a somewhat maybe unexpected topic, and that is research and data. Bear with me, you'll get it. While numbers can be impersonal and cold, their impacts certainly don't have to be. Researchers and data analysts contribute one form of storytelling and transform one form of storytelling that transforms a person from being a singular number, like 1 in 650,000 people experiencing homelessness. Instead, data can help paint a story of a mother, of someone who has served their country, of someone's child, of groups of peoples persisting through generations of oppression. Taking steps further down that road, many researchers do valuable qualitative work, learning more about people through asking insightful questions and actually talking to them. When this work is done well, it can help human beings start to see each other, start to see a human being where otherwise they would have seen a blank space or just a number. Contributing to spaces in which we can lead with love, respect, and a strong sense of the need for equity. In recent years, many of our partners have been leading with love in their research work. Benioff's Homelessness and Housing Initiative administered over 3,000 questionnaires and conducted 365 in-depth interviews with people experiencing homelessness. The results were a much more nuanced story about why people become homeless and how they can solve their own housing challenges. This was one method of giving voices to individual people's stories, which were collectively heard in California's State House, various mayor's offices across the state, business communities, and neighborhood meetings. And they hired people with lived experience to help spread the word about their findings, but also gave a platform for people with lived experience to share their own stories. Wilder Research in Minnesota regularly enhances the research typically made available through a pit count, making a point to highlight barriers and needs related to overall health, trauma, and systemic racism. When New York City and the Real Estate Board of New York use their talents to delve into the administrative delays, technology challenges, and caseworker turnover that frustrates efforts to get permanent housing through a voucher. And then they said, by the way, here's a long list of ways you can fix it all. Because in the end, love is shown through actually getting people housing and really making a difference. In the Alliance's work with its growing research network, we are hearing about evolving ways researchers are working with others, including people with lived experience, direct service workers, and system leaders in the projects that they are developing. There can be love, equity, and respect in these partnerships, and the work that comes out of these efforts can help community leaders reflect those same values when they're doing the work of ending homelessness. So Now it's my pleasure to continue the conversation about love by introducing a person whose work definitely reflects that value. Often there is no greater bond than the connection that exists between a person and their pet. This is even more true for people experiencing homelessness and housing instability, and of course, other life traumas. Dr. Kwane Stewart's nonprofit organization, Project Street Vet, provides free veterinary care to people experiencing homelessness. An outgrowth of dedicated personal service, Project Street Vet now encompasses volunteers and staff in locations throughout the country. Named a CNN Hero of the Year for 2023, and likely by many of the lives he's touched, please welcome Dr. Kwane.
Yes, this is exciting. When they asked me to come, I pictured maybe 30 or 40 of us in a room chatting over my morning coffee. They didn't prepare me for this. Suddenly my hands feel a little clammy. Thank you. It is an honor to be here. I thought I would share a little bit of my story and start at the end of my story. And the reason I was asked to be here today, the privilege of speaking to all of you here today, it has started back in December when I was recognized as a CNN hero, and it kicked off a very exciting past 6 months. So I'm going to start there, and then I'll take you back to the beginning. And then, they didn't prepare us for this part, so this is sort of off the cuff. Thank you. I've wanted to be a veterinarian my whole life. Since I was a child. And, my dad told me to keep it together. I don't know if that's going to happen, old man. He's here tonight, too. If I, as a child, could dream of doing something that was impactful, then I think I found it, or it found me. And I'm so lucky to be doing what I'm doing. And I have so many people to be grateful for. There's so many people that have helped get me here, my parents who instilled good values, my brother who helped me start the charity, Ian, thank you, our volunteer veterinarians and technicians, my family, my better half who's here tonight, my wonderful kids, Danae, my technician, who's home crying right now. Thank you. It's been a wonderful journey, and as I get older, I start thinking about those big questions in life. Why are we here? What defines us? Why are we human? And I think the answer, at least for me, the answer is in the question, what does it mean to be human? And I believe it's humanity. It's looking out for each other, believing in each other, helping one another. And all of these people embody that. This part certainly wasn't planned, but the 100,000 I want to celebrate with all of you. It splits evenly 10 ways pretty nicely. So it is my contribution to all of us. I want to say I'm honored to know you and to be a part of this fraternity. I'm here in part because I've been willing to share and give throughout my life. There's no reason to stop doing that tonight. I have one last quick thought. I was in the streets one day, and an unhoused man and his pet, after I delivered care, we got to talking, and he said sort of nonchalant, he hadn't eaten in almost 2 days. And I was due for lunch myself. I returned with a sandwich for myself and for him. He tore off, it was a sub sandwich, he tore off a corner of it, really just a piece of bread. He ate it and he gave the rest to his dog. And they've taught me a lot too. I'll close by saying this: an act of kindness can change your day, change someone's day. An act or gesture of kindness can change somebody's life. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I joke about that moment that I decided to share the money. When I started as a veterinarian in 1997. I was making roughly $40,000 a year. And it would have taken me about 2.5 years to make what I gave away in 10 seconds. And I just joke with my friends, I think I blacked out in that moment. But those people were also deserving. And they're all doing wonderful work on the ground, grassroots, that in that moment I just felt like it was the best thing to do. So, but it wasn't always tuxes and galas. There was a time when I had actually thought about quitting the profession altogether. And so I call this my 7-Eleven story. About 14 years ago, I was a shelter veterinarian, and it was during the recession. So a lot of us recall the recession around 2008, 2012. And during that span of time, I was working at a municipal shelter in Northern California. And it was terrible. I got into this work obviously to save animals, but at this time, we were euthanizing 50, 60 dogs and cats by 10 a.m. And it was starting to steal a part of my soul. So I recall sitting outside 7-Eleven one day, and I thought about quitting. I was going to go in that day and hand off my resignation letter. And so I was sitting there in my car, rehearsing this in my head, stone-faced. I did notice a man sitting outside the storefront, and he'd been there before. I'd seen him probably 5 or 6 times before, but sadly had just walked right by him. But on this day, for whatever reason, as I was coming out of the store with my coffee, I stepped over, and I noticed his dog had some sort of skin condition. And you do this long enough, you can start to diagnose things from, 8, 9 feet away, and it looked like just fleas. Just looked like a chronic flea condition. But when dogs have fleas long enough, bad enough, it can really destroy the skin. And this dog looked like a burn victim on its hind end. So the hair was gone, the skin was red and bumpy, was infected. I introduced myself. I said, my name's Kwane Stewart, I'm a veterinarian. I see your dog has some sort of skin condition. And the man was just desperate. He was exasperated. He said, yeah, for about 3 or 4 months now, she's been suffering, itching, she won't sleep, I'm miserable, she's miserable. I said, if you're here tomorrow, I'll return with something that should work. And I did, as promised. It was a $3 flea treatment, $3 out of my pocket. Or I guess as I say now, being completely honest, it was $3 out of the pocket of the shelter. I wouldn't have said that back then, I might have lost my job over $3. And 5 more minutes of my time, and then I saw the same dog and same man about 12 days later, and the dog was transformed. She was full of life. She was wagging her tail. She came up to me and gave me a kiss. And the man sitting in the same spot just looked up at me with tears in his eyes, and he said, thank you for not ignoring me. And that was a moment for me. I guess that's when I came into the light. Because prior to that, if I'm being honest, I had my own set of judgments about the unhoused. And at times was reluctant to offer help because I questioned whether they should even have a pet. I have completely walked that back. I've gone from judgment to their biggest advocate. Thank you. So you guys know some of these numbers. The part that you may not know is about 18 to 20% on average, state by state, are unhoused, own a pet. In California, that probably runs a little bit higher, closer to 25, 30%, I would say, in my experience. And what's interesting about California is it's roughly 13% of the US population, but 30% of the unhoused. So you extrapolate the numbers, there is no shortage of pets on the streets that I walk out and I care for now, almost on a daily basis. So 2011, that's when my story began. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just packed a bag one day after making a little pledge to that man I had met when I told him I was going to find more people like him. I started walking the streets day after day, usually after work or on weekends, and I would deliver whatever care I could right there on the street corner. I carried a bag full of medical supplies, and remarkably, about 80% of the dogs I see on the streets, I can treat out of that little bag. And it's wellness, it's vaccines, it's flea and tick, and I do what I can right there under a traffic clamp or in an alleyway. That was, 13 and a half years ago, and I haven't stopped since. So the best part of doing this work are the encounters with the people. Now, as a veterinarian, I will also confess that I went this route versus human medicine because I didn't like people. I think if you ask most veterinarians, they will tell you, I do this work because I really don't like people. But as you come to learn, you're dealing with the people every bit as much, even more so, as their spokesperson. Let me tee this up. So this is a man named Richard. Richard is a veteran suffering from PTSD. He wasn't a man of means, and I gathered this on the first day I met him. He came into my clinic. His car was barely drivable. He had the rear view mirror taped up, and there was pieces of metal hanging off. He later told me he lived in a trailer, was living on his retirement. It wasn't much money. But he came in and he said, "Doc, my dog's not urinating." And first thing I did was take an x-ray, and I found, as you see here in this picture, about 200 bladder stones. In fact, this is probably more bladder stones than I've ever found in a dog's bladder. So you can see in that picture down in the left-hand corner, she was unable to urinate because her bladder was just impacted with stones. I explained to him it's going to require surgery, and I gave him an estimate. And the estimate ran somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000, $5,500. He didn't bat an eye. He said, "Doc, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out." He said, "That's why they invented oatmeal. I will make sure I get the money." He walked out, and I called him later. I said, "Richard, I'd love to post your story on my social media site and just see if I can help raise money." He said, "Sure." He said, "That's fine." He wasn't expecting much, so I did. And within 5 days, I'd raised $13,000 for him and Courtney. But the best part is here when I decided to share the news.
I put together an estimate for the surgery. And like I said, it includes everything. The anesthesia, the blood work, the procedure. Yeah, I posted your picture in the story. I was trying to raise money for her procedure for you. And after the money I raised, this is what you're gonna have to pay.
Dr. Stewart.
That's wonderful.
God. I lost my twin brother 17 years ago, and I don't think I've cried since.
You're welcome.
Gotcha. God said.
So Courtney's doing great today. That was his support system. He said he was alive because of Courtney. Just as a follow-up, the $7,000 or $8,000 that was left over, I put in reserves for him and his other 2 pets and said, anytime you need anything, the money is here waiting for you. You know what he told me? He said, "Nope, you pay it forward, Doc, you pay it forward." So this is another Richard, and Richard wasn't housed. He was living in his car, and I happened upon him about 3 years ago in San Diego. That's where I reside. And Richard just had an impressive attitude. Just you meet some of these people, as you guys know, they have so much hope. You go out in the world and people are complaining about their coffee not being the right temperature, and then you go on the streets and you meet some of these people, and they're just looking towards the next day. And they give you a bit of inspiration. That was Richard. He had been living in his car for about 2 years. What's interesting is his brother also lived in San Diego, but his brother could not accept his dogs. He said, "Brother, you can come live with me, but you can't bring your dogs." There was some sort of medical issue, I think an allergy. So Richard just said, I'll live in my car and I'll figure it out. I will never separate from my dogs.
She's been with me since she was 6 weeks old, and she's been with me since she was 1.
I don't know anybody else could imagine being a day without him.
Man, you know what? My brother really wants me to give him up, but I can't do that. Well, he lives out here. He's got a place for me, but I can't give up, man.
So Richard and I stayed in touch, and on my little media tour after the whole CNN thing, I decided to bring Richard out to New York with me and let him tell the story.
Recently, you went beyond pets. So tell us about Richard.
You can't help but make a connection to the people, obviously. And I was in San Diego, my hometown is San Diego. And I came across this gentleman. And we got to talking after I treated his dogs, Princess Leia and Pudding.
Yes.
He's a crazy Star Wars guy. And I walked away and I want to help this guy. I reached out to a friend of mine, a partner, a ballistic vet. And together we bought Richard a brand new van. So at least he'd have a better place to sleep, heat, warmth, get around, get in touch. And yeah, we're pretty tight. We help each other out now.
I'm just in shock that someone would do that for a total stranger. You know what I mean? And not expect anything in return.
Everybody, Richard is actually in our audience. Hi, Richard. Oh, you got me. What was that moment like? That had to change your life, like getting that van.
It did, and I can't believe it. I still can't believe it. 3 days after the gifting of the van, my brother puts me in contact with one of his friends. He gives me a job as a security guard. I'm a security guard.
Yeah.
4 months. 4 months after that, Dr. Kwane had put me in contact with the Veterans Administration. I never asked him for anything till I met Dr. Kwane. And 4 months after that, they housed me. So.
Oh, you want to say something to Dr. Kwane?
You know what? Hey, I love you, Dr. Kwane. You're awesome. I honestly feel that you're an angel on this planet. And if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. I probably wouldn't be housed. Thank you.
And Richard and I are still friends today. We do help each other out. So just some quick info on the charity. I lead with the motto, no judgment, just help, and that was after my own experience, my own judgments. And what was once a one-man band, me, 11 years ago, is now expanded to 8 different cities around the country, and I have volunteer vets in multiple communities doing exactly what I do in Southern California. It's growing by the day. There are some of the stats from 2023 and the expansion. And now the dream can really push on. I never imagined that what started as a chance encounter from the 7-Eleven would end up turning into all this. So what I've learned, I could go on and on. I have learned that these people I've met in the streets are just people. And I am no better than them, and they are no different than me. I've learned that their pets are their lives, in many cases. They keep them breathing. I met a lady in the streets one day, and she said, 2 weeks ago, I was about to take my life. By her own admission, she had completely lost the support of friends and family in her life. She was a drug addict for the better part of 9 years. And over time, as some of you have seen, everyone around her had left her. She only had her dog. She had it all planned out. She was going to take this handful of pills, drink a bottle of whiskey, and call it good. But on this night, she said she looked over and saw her dog sleeping. This one was pretty recent, so it still gets me too. And she just said, well, if I go tonight, who's going to feed you in the morning? So that is what these pets mean to these people. And that is why I do what I do. The other thing I want to say, and this is something I've learned over time, is I feel like we've gotten away from who we are. I still love this country. And when I think about the principles that this country was founded on, hard work and enterprise, and secondly, and just as important, looking out for thy neighbor. And because of this political climate, becomes so polarizing, economic situation, we really have gotten away from looking out for each other. My dad was raised in the South, Monroe, Louisiana, household of 10 brothers and sisters. And he always told me growing up that if anybody was hungry in the neighborhood, they always had a seat at this table. Big Mama would cook up whatever they needed and send them on their way. It could have been a neighborhood kid, it could have been a family that was struggling, but they were always looking out for each other. You know, I think to some degree, and this was told to me by a friend of mine, we are all experiencing homelessness. We're not all on the streets and suffering as some of these folks are, but we probably know somebody who is, we have a friend or a family member who's been there, perhaps it's encroaching in your own neighborhood. We're all seeing it, we're all experiencing it, and therefore we have an obligation to do something about it. All of us collectively. In the time that I've been doing this, and yes, it has been the most rewarding 27 years of my life, I have discovered that when we do something out of love and not out of obligation, without agenda, without pay, that is when you feel your human spirit. That is when you feel alive. I've never been paid for the work I do, and I've told people I will never take a dime. We run on donations, but I've never paid myself, nor my veterinarians. We do what we do out of love. We lead with our heart. I was telling my son, I have a 23-year-old son who just graduated from college. I told him that, and he said, "Dad, that's cheesy. Don't lead with that." I said, "Don't worry, son. Keep living, keep growing." This little saying sits on my fireplace, on my mantle. It was given to me by Dr. Schmidt. She's my superstar Atlanta veterinarian who reached out on something called Instagram, which I don't like, a few years ago, and said, "I want to do what you do." She says she's one of my disciples. And she says she goes out every day and she leads with kindness. And I say I do the same. I want to thank all of you for hearing my little journey. We do have a lot more work to do, and nobody knows that more than you. I want to recognize all of you as well. As I said, when I was brought into the fold many years ago, I had no idea what we were up against. But I do believe together, working together, helping each other, and leading with love, we will get there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we have Albert Townsend, the Director of Lived Experience and Innovation at the Alliance.
Hello, everyone. My name is Albert. I am the Director of Lived Experience here at the Alliance. And I want to wish you well today, first and foremost. And I'm excited that you're here. And I hope your expectation and experiences are living up to your imaginations today. Before I introduce the next speakers, and before we embark on this conversation, you will hear from one of our tireless lived experience advocates, who is Helen Cruz from Grants Pass, Oregon, where the city of Grants Pass is having a difficult time understanding how cruel and unusual punishment impacts the lives of our unhoused neighbors in their city, and how this conversation about cruel and unusual punishment might be disheartening and distracting, but it's a needed conversation. Bringing our unhoused neighbors home in this current climate might suggest that we are doing this very, very hard work in vain, but we want to let you know that we are on track, but there's still a lot of work to do, as you can see. What we want to do, or what we know, is that together we are smart people in this work, and we can't be taken advantage of when it comes to serving and protecting our unhoused neighbors. So this conference congregation, which means you, serves the true purpose and meaning that our hearts, our minds, and souls are in unison, and that we are in this together. And that confirms the theme around faith, love, hope, and equality. and this theme is really feeling promising. I had the opportunity to speak with Helen for about an hour yesterday, and the conversation went really, really well. I think the first thing is that Helen is a very compassionate person. The whole time she had tears in her eyes, so I know for sure that she's very gentle, but also that she cares about the people in Grant Pass. So I did the thing with her about having a long conversation, but she was really on point about all the necessary answers that's needed. But I did ask her about some things about our theme. And the first thing I asked her is, I said, how is faith connected to the unhoused community and Grant Pass? And Helen stated that faith has been around for ages. And when you think about faith within unhoused community, you automatically think about prayer. You think about salvation, you think about obedience, nurturing them and centering their lives and giving a sense of certainty. So having faith is a catalyst, she said, bringing our unhoused community home. I also asked Helen about love. I said, how does love connect to the unhoused community and Grant Pass? And Helen said she just serves people with compassion and that she brings a smile to the unhoused community faces. It doesn't matter if they're living in a park, sleeping in a car, on a park bench, roaming the streets, or just trying to find their way. She is there to serve them compassionately with love. So having love for this community is also a catalyst to bringing them home in Grant Pass. I also asked her about hope and how's hope connected to the young unhoused community. And Helen said, hope is something that the community looks each and every day for because the community deserve it. They shouldn't have to beg for hope. Hope should be guaranteed and hope should be attainable and accessible. So having hope for this community is also a catalyst around bringing our unsheltered community home. And lastly, I asked Helen about how is equality connected to the unhoused community in Grant Pass. Helen stated that equality can change the course of action in their life. It will place the unhoused in spaces that they never knew that they could be. It will uplift how we see each other and write laws that protect people, places, and possessions. Helen stated that equality is definitely another catalyst for bringing our unhoused neighbors home. So faith, love, hope, and equality has its space and place in our everyday existence. It anchors our whole being, it directs the universe, and it drives our core purpose. I can say without a doubt that faith, love, hope, and equality is invincible. But why does it feel like faith, love, hope, and equality doesn't have any merit or value for specifically our unhoused community? So we're hoping this conference community, meaning you, is in support around the mission to prevent and end homelessness across the country in unison and alignment with faith, love, hope, and equality, and the work that needs to be done in moving our unhoused neighbors home without using cruel and unusual punishment. And I'll read Helen's bio. Helen May Cruz has called Grant Pass home for 45 years. Helen has lived with unstable or no housing for long stretches of her childhood and adult life. Helen has gone from living on mountaintops to parks to churches, and she's seen a lot on her journey. She is boots on the ground, though. Helen brings a fierce attitude of organizing and helping her unhoused community members be the best possible version of themselves. So I just want to say right now, we want to make sure we give Helen a really strong round of applause, but not yet. We just want to make sure everyone's in line. So let's just raise our hand and shake our hand like this. Everybody, raise your hand. Come on, get your hands up. So I'm going to introduce Helen. We got to give her a really strong round of applause and welcome her unconditionally. So ladies and gentlemen, from Grant Pass, Oregon, please welcome Helen Cruz. Helen's conversation will be led by our VP of Capacity Building and TA Work, Mary Francis.
Ready?
Yes, I am.
All right. It's us between lunch.
And that pie.
So Helen, first, thank you for being here with us today. Some people in this room have already met you because you were at the Supreme Court on the day of oral arguments back in April. And as we've been preparing for today, of course, we found out recently about the SCOTUS decision, and it didn't go in our favor. And many people have come to know Grants Pass, or Johnson versus Grants Pass, but the original plaintiff in that case was Deborah Blake.
Yes.
And Deborah was more than just a plaintiff. She was someone that was your friend for a very long time and a mother figure in the community of Grants Pass. We also talked about your friend, John Francis, also known as Pajama Guy, who really, in a very tragic way, died on the streets of Grants Pass while unhoused. We have just over 2,000 people here today. So what do you want them to know about Deborah Blake, about Pajama Guy, and about the unhoused community in Grants Pass as people and as humans?
I would like them to know, first of all, that they are human. We are people. And Deborah Blake was a force to be reckoned with. She is one of my inspirations for being here today. She's put some drive in me that, I never knew I had inside of me. And I didn't want to see what she'd started go to the wayside. I wanted to, she never got to hear the ruling because she died before the ruling came in. And I think that John Francis, he was a funny guy. He was my friend. And neither one of them deserved to be unhoused when they died. I think that it was unnecessary. If they'd have had a home, he wouldn't have been out in the heat. He just dropped dead on the street walking back to his camp. So it was unnecessary. But they're people. They were my friends.
So you talked about home just now. Wouldn't have happened if they had a home. You've called Grants Pass home since the age of 4. So for over 40 years, you have been a neighbor, a friend, a community member, an employee. It's been your home for as long as you can remember. And you know the people, they know you. You're vocal, especially at City Council.
Yes, ma'am.
But there are some people that within their own communities view people who are homeless, particularly people who are homeless outdoors, as outsiders. And there's this narrative that we often hear that, those people are coming from other places and becoming homeless in our community. What do you want to say to those who believe that people who are homeless are outsiders? Because we know that that's not actually the case.
No, it's not at all, especially in Grants Pass. I grew up there, and most of the people that are homeless right now have been there all their life. They were born there, they were raised there. And for, the community of Grants Pass to call us outsiders when, pretty much we were there first. They came into our home and they forced us out of our homes because they wanted to buy property, and build these big houses and start their bread and breakfasts and stuff like that. They pushed us out of our home. They're the outsiders, not us.
So my next question for you, you have been, and we've talked about how recently the city actually cut off water in the parks. You have personally been on the vicious cycle, the receiving end of the vicious cycle of criminalization, having your belongings damaged, having your shelter destroyed, being fined, having to move every couple of days, and being faced with arrest for failure to move. But yet and still, you have emerged as a very vocal advocate, not just locally at City Council, not just on Twitter, but also nationally. What do you want the audience to know about what's driving you to speak up and be that advocate?
What drives me is, I do believe that everybody needs to realize that just because we're unhoused or we don't have a home, whether we live in a tent or you have a structure around you, we are still people, we are human. We breathe, we bleed, and, we are all the same. I think that, if people would just gather the concept, just let the concept go of, of those people, or they don't belong, or, they're less than, there could be a big change. There's got to be a way to bridge the gap. And I do believe when people start realizing, when they look at somebody who's homeless, don't look at the outside, because everybody has a story. They had a home once, they had a job once, and for whatever reason, something happened and it put them where they are, but it doesn't mean that they're not somebody's son, father, child, daughter, mother. It doesn't mean that they're not human and they don't belong. They deserve as much right and dignity and respect as everybody in here does. And the fact that, thank you. I believe that compassion and kindness go a long way. When you look at somebody who's homeless, instead of shunning them and saying, oh, don't go near them, it's like, look at them and say, hey, how are you doing? And let me tell you something. If you do that to somebody who's homeless, that is priceless to them. To know that somebody actually cared, to know that somebody wants to know how they're doing, to know that somebody's not just passing them by going, oh, look at that thing, If you just show care and kindness and compassion, it makes a world of difference. It is absolutely priceless to somebody who's homeless.
And did you know, up until recently, that there were people that not just care about you, but the community of Grants Pass?
No, I had no idea until I went to the Supreme Court and spoke in front of the Supreme Court. Because I remember, being on the streets off and on for so long, that feeling so alone and like, nobody out there cared. And then when I came to DC the first time, I was like, oh my goodness, look at all you people. There is somebody out here who does care and who does want to see something better and does want to see, a change for us.
So where do we go from here now that the Supreme Court has sided with the city of Grants Pass? What do you think communities should be doing instead of criminalizing people who are experiencing homelessness?
Well, one of my reasons that I'm here is so I can just gather up as much knowledge as I can, so I can go back home to Grants Pass and say in front of the city council, look, what are you guys doing? Look, there's so many options out here. I want to have enough ammunition when I go back there to where I have the knowledge to be able to implement. And as far as we need to, sign bills, do legislation, we need to make sure that our governments are doing what they're supposed to be doing. $9.37 million was allotted to the city of Grants Pass for ARP money, and they want to build an $11 million swimming pool. Nothing for affordable housing, nothing at all. They are using that money for everything else except for what it's intended for. And it's not right. So I'm going to find a way to figure that one out. I'm not the smartest, but I'm not dumb. Homeless cannot live in a swimming pool, I know that.
Right. So there are a number of people in this room today that have come from Oregon that have similar values. What do you need them? How do you need for them to show up for you and the community of Grants Pass?
You know, I'm pretty sure that their communities, you know, are going through probably the same thing that Grants Pass is. You know, everybody across the United States is. You know, it's not just Grants Pass. This ruling came down and it affected the entire United States. And the fact that, you know, cities and city councils are being so cruel and so vicious towards the fact that people don't have a home and it's okay to take their belongings and it's okay to destroy them and throw them away, is just, it blows my mind that they can be so unkind. And if anybody out there, you know, just go to your city council and like I said, I'm learning this myself right now, but we need to get our legislation and our city government and our governors and mayors or whatever, you know, we all need to be on the same page.
So I have had the pleasure of working in the state of Oregon for a little over 3 years with many people in this very room. And one of the things that I shared with you about that work was that regardless of what part of the state I've worked in, so from corner to corner, differences across all walks of life, race, ethnicity, political affiliation, economic status, professional background, and a variety of lived experiences. What I have learned to be true about most people in the state of Oregon is that they care deeply about solving homelessness. And when I shared that with you, I told you that it gave me a sense of hope because, you know, for obvious reasons, Oregon's been in the news a lot lately, and not positively. But I know to be true that there are people that are making things happen behind the scenes. And that gives me a lot of hope. What is giving you hope in this moment, despite all of the bad news of late?
You know, when the ruling came down and I had to go back out to my community and, you know, let them know that they ruled in favor of Grants Pass. It was a pretty hard blow for Grants Pass and the homeless community. But what I told them and what I've found, seeing all you guys here now, is I told them to not give up hope because there is people out there that care. You know, there is people out there that they have our backs. You know, I'm sitting in over 2,000 people here right now, and this is proof right here, you know. When I got donation for water for, you know, before I left from Grants Pass, when I got that donation for water, I went out and I bought 45 cases of water. And I delivered them to all the parks because there was no water and it was very hot. And, but I made sure that I let the community over there that's homeless, that you guys are the ones that donated and you guys are the ones that made it happen. And there is people out there that care. There's people out there that care about us. We're not invisible. And you are the people who make it to where we have hope. You know, we have faces now. We're just not somebody to be shunned. And you people right now are the ones who have made that happen. And I can't thank you enough.
Helen, are there any final thoughts that you want to share that we didn't have an opportunity to touch on? This is your time to say whatever you feel is on your heart.
Mostly for the homeless community out there, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Don't be afraid to speak up. You know, don't be intimidated. Don't let them bully you. You know, don't let them feel like you don't have a voice, because you do. You know, there's a lot of people out there that are too afraid to because they're too afraid of the repercussions, you know, and they need to realize, you know, just stand up for yourself and be heard, because that's the only way that anything's going to change. If you use your voice, if you be heard, don't be afraid to stand up and let them know that you are human too.
Helen, I want to thank you for
Thank you.
being out here with us today.
Thank
We're
you.
going to continue to fight this fight together.
Thank you.
I think you exude hope for the rest of us, just knowing the work that you're doing. And I want everyone to stand up for Helen. Let's celebrate her in this moment. Come on.
Thank you all. Thank you guys too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'd like to introduce Dr. Sharon McDonald, the Alliance's Senior Advisor.
Hi, I am your last speaker before lunch, and I'm here to close out the plenary around the value of today's session that really focused on love. And let me share that talk of love does not flow easily for a child of Scottish and Irish-Scottish immigrants. But I'm going to try and do my best and share how I've seen love show up at the conference so far. I see it in the perseverance of my colleague who refuses to believe that even the most entrenched opponent cannot be persuaded to see the wisdom and justice of ending homelessness. I see it in the heartbreak of those who participated in the virtual reality tour of a tent home being dismantled. I feel it in the hugs of old friends here, including one from the Alliance's very first grassroots organizer, who I reunited with at last night's reception, as well as the second ever grassroots organizer who, with her colleagues, are rocking things in Dallas. I see it in the determination of those who are headed to the Hill tomorrow, including those who have lost loved ones to homelessness. And to provide a quote I recently heard from a homeless advocate, it takes only two things to be effective: to care and to tell people you care. I see it in the kindness of those with lived experience who every day make space and provide care to others in need. I see it in the bravery of my colleague and many others who are sharing their own lived experience and risking great vulnerability to share the pain of homelessness and illuminate our path out of it. I've heard people talk about the acceptance they feel here for them and for their families, and from people who have found community here today within this community. And let me say to the first-time conference goers, this community lasts and you are now part of it. Tonight, I expect to see love in the great joy that will fill this room as we do live music karaoke and we learn about the awe-inspiring talent that right now sits unknown amongst our midst. And I see love in the compassion and care of those who work long shifts, who show kindness despite being tired, the volunteers who withstand the cold to do the point-in-time count, the people that do the long days over holidays to complete grant proposals and NOFAs, and people who show great patience with people in great distress to provide them comfort. This talk of love in our work may be newer and feel more awkward for some of us older hats in the room. Please be patient with us. And teach us something by tweeting how love is showing up for you and in our work, and sharing that with your colleagues here and at home. So thank you very much.
I'm not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us. Oh, we're glorious. When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, I'm gonna send the flood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I made no apologies. This is me. Another round of bullets hits my skin. Will fire away. Comes today, I won't let the shame sink in. We are bursting through the barricades and reaching for the sun. Oh, that's when we become glorious. Gonna drown them out. I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I make no apologies. This is me. Oh. And I know that I deserve your love. There's nothing I'm not worthy of. When the sharpest words want to break you down, I'm gonna send the flood, gonna drown them out. This is brave, this is bruised, this is who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come.